Well, hi, Jen, and thank you so much for being on this new episode of The Unheard. I'm so happy to see you today.
Yes, thank you for having me, Lisa. It was something I wanted to partake in, so I'm happy I'm able to be a part of it.
So, what pushed you then to share your story with us?
Okay, so I think that the chronically ill and disabled population are probably the least understood, largest, most discriminated against population, at least in the United States. I feel that way. Even when it comes to doctors, your family and friends, there's just a lack of understanding surrounding what chronic illness is. And anything to bring awareness to that, I'm happy to do. And Ren's modeled it so well that it really gave me the courage to do this. And then also, if something I say, strikes one person, whether they be the patient themselves or a parent or a caregiver, it'll have been worth it to do this interview.
Yeah. So it's just about trying to uh, raise awareness and maybe bring some understanding to people. Then,
Yes, and any advice or help I can give, I've healed from the grieving that you go through with chronic illness and come out on the acceptance side, finally,
yeah,
after many years. And so I hope I can bring some hope too.
yeah. That's my entire point of doing all of this is to raise awareness, but also to bring some hope to other people because I know that chronic illnesses make you feel very alone most of the time because you
Yeah.
feel misunderstood and there are not always that many people around you who are going through the same thing. So it's often a very lonely place to be in. So yeah, what's your journey been, and how did all of this start, and what are the different pathologies you have?
Okay, so I have three main autoimmune disorders, and I actually share them with Ren. Some of them are the same, which once I found that out, I was like fangirling because not like freaking out, but just like when you meet someone with a chronic illness, it's exciting. And then when you meet someone or know of someone or hear of someone that has your disorders, you're like, no way. It's thrilling. So, anyway, I have a mast cell activation disorder, uh, and that it's the white blood cells in the body, which is the first line of defense, and it can basically attack anywhere in the body, and it releases chemicals,
Hmm.
and they can cross the blood-brain barrier or go into the gut or anything like that. So the symptoms are really systemic. It's also responsible for the allergic immune response, so it can
Yeah,
cause anaphylaxis.
yeah. And do
Uh,
you have any food allergies because of MCAS?
yes, preservatives and dyes are what get me. It's not the food themselves. I have no food allergies, but I
Okay.
cannot eat processed foods.
So you try to eat mainly organic then?
Just whole foods and foods I make from scratch.
Mm.
That they can't have like a shelf life, really. I'm
But
getting into canning.
which is better for the body anyway, in any
Oh,
case.
definitely what I'm doing. And it's made a world of difference changing my diet from processed foods to eating whole foods that don't have all the added ingredients in it. I've seen the effects of what preservatives and dyes do to me, and it's not
Mm.
fun. So,
So how did you come to know that it was specifically those things that were causing your MCAS to flare up?
once, first I started with an elimination diet. And then I slowly added foods back in, and I was really careful. I wasn't eating corn, soy, gluten. I was avoiding all those. And then I realized, well, homemade stuff isn't really making me sick,
Mm,
but the processed things that I'm buying at the store and eating, or I go to parties and eat Cool Whip or something like that, I'm getting sick. So
mhm.
I started to see the correlation when I drank this bottle of water that had like siciliates in it or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's some preservative, and I just had a full on onslaught of like an allergic reaction from it, and that's what had me start paying attention to preservatives more. And
Okay.
then since I've cut out things, when I do eat something with a preservative, I always have a reaction. Like
Okay.
dyes make me angry. They really affect behavior.
And so when did you find out about the MCAS? When was that diagnosed?
So that was diagnosed when I was 34 years old, and that was my first
Mhm.
diagnosis. That was
So
correct.
quite late then.
Yes, it took 30 years to get all my diagnoses figured out. So I went undiagnosed for 30 years.
But can you now, in retrospect, do you see where some of the things started?
Oh, absolutely. Everything is obvious now that health is like an iceberg. I see it as. And there, you see the symptoms, at the top, but then you got to dig down a little bit. And that's how we found mast cell.
Mhm.
And then my second disorder is PAN, which is pediatric acute neuropsychiatric syndrome. That's what Ren has, which is an umbrella term for pathogens like Lyme, Bartonella, Mycoplasma, the strep virus. And when that part of it, the puzzle or the iceberg, was revealed, we were able to start better targeted treatments to what was actually going on. And that came when I was 37.
But so you did go to some doctor who was open to that diagnosis, because I know that PANS is a controversial diagnosis and that not all doctors agree that it is something and that it exists. And it has been controversial for 10 years now. So you went to see some doctor who does
Yeah.
agree with that diagnosis then, and who put you through some tests or something.
Yes. I found a doctor that was 4 hours away in Iowa, and my husband drove me up there to see her. I was at my illest
Mm,
at this time, so I couldn't drive, and there was no way I could make it there myself.
yeah.
But yeah, I went to see her, and she had a more holistic approach. She was on board with the antibiotics, and um I don't know, it wasn't like not fungal, but viral
Hmm.
medications to help kill some of the bacteria. But she started me on a regimen of vitamins to help clear up my gut and stuff like that, and boost my immune system. And then we started treatment with the antibiotics and such.
But so if they diagnose the PANS, do you think that you maybe had PANDAS when you were a child?
Yes, I acquired it when I was 8 years old.
And how did you get to the point where you thought about that age and what happened there?
At age 8, I developed as some motor and vocal tics out of the blue. My mom took me to the doctor. The doctor said, "It's anxiety. Don't worry about it." And I also developed obsessive compulsive not disorder, but traits,
Okay.
OCD traits. And then I had difficulty swallowing and severe acid reflux. But every doctor I went to, they couldn't find rhyme or reason for why it was happening. So just like in Ren's song Troubles, you go doctor to doctor, but you end up with more questions than answers at the end of the appointment. So that was basically my life from 8 to 12. I had my tonsils and adenoids out when I was young. So I didn't have your typical sore throat.
Hmm.
So that was actually the strep virus. And when you look back at my labs and such, my strep titers were high at the time that these symptoms were occurring. And they
So,
continued to
so
occur.
yeah, it was probably due to strep infection then at that
Yeah.
time. Yeah. Okay. And so you went undiagnosed for so many years. So how were your teens then? What happened there? Because it must have been quite difficult to manage.
Yeah. So basically, when I was 12 years old, I was a happy, somewhat normal child. I had my
Mhm.
little quirks from having pans or pandas. But I went to bed one night and then I woke up the next morning just depressed, like a totally different person. And, I had from going one day to being a happy child to the next day thinking about suicide. It should have been a red flag,
Mhm.
but it wasn't.
Mhm.
So they treated me for a lot of mental health disorders over the years. And, but I didn't have a mental health disorder, so none of the medications worked. So I was just so depressed and sad and um you get angry too. And then the spiritual battle that Ren talks about comes in, and I dealt with that in my teens.
Yeah.
And you just can't comprehend uh why something so horrific would happen to an innocent child.
Yeah. Yeah, that it does bring up a lot of inner battles if it's spiritual or just with yourself, and it's just, yeah, I know how that feels because I went into deep depression when I was 12. So I can really get what you're saying, how you could feel at that time, because it does, and it inflicts so much psychological pain that it's really difficult while you're trying to grow up to handle that kind of stuff at the same time, and then get to a point where you're a healthy, you know adult with a healthy mindset. It's just impossible. I mean, you really need even more time after that to get to somewhere where you feel stable. So
Yeah,
I know that it's only been in the past few years that I've stabilized, my mental health, and accepted who I am. And I mean, it's just so it just um hurts you so deeply, and it's just so difficult to manage what when you've been through really difficult years in your teens. It affects you so much when you're an adult.
it does. And with your brain development and all of that going on, that plays a huge role.
I think it's really 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 hard to explain to someone who hasn't gone through all of this how you feel, and that they just believe you.
Yes. And as a child, you don't fully understand what mental health is, and there you can't really do research. uh so that was kind of hard. And You know, when I think back, everything I did was just a cry for help. Any self-injury was never like, "Oh, I hate myself, I'm gonna take it out on me." It was a
Mhm,
cry for help. It
mhm.
was saying, "Look, I'm hurting."
Mm.
So,
And you didn't feel like there was no one around you that listened or that understood you?
um, my parents listened. They did, but, I don't know, the doctors I mean, I didn't have a mental health condition, and that's what they were trying to treat.
Mm,
It was just no one could help me. I
yeah,
just wanted help.
yeah.
I wanted to feel better, just like Slaughterhouse, you know?
Yep,
Is there, somebody, anybody help? Like, that was
yeah.
me as a child, and that's why, I dressed like I did, and I did what I did. I just cries for help.
And so that went on for a long time then, if you were only diagnosed 4 years ago.
Yes, my mental health did get better over the years as it transitioned over to physical symptoms
Yeah,
more. But when I was 16, I kind of woke up stupid one day. And I don't mean that in a mean way,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I had the memory of like a goldfish. I couldn't follow conversations. I had word trouble finding. So my parents, being the awesome parents that they were, took me to another doctor to get academic testing, and I was diagnosed with ADHD, executive function disorder, and slow processing speed. And this was also out of the blue, just brain
Yeah,
damage that, it should have been another red flag.
yeah.
So,
But I also think that maybe, we what we experienced as kids in regards to where the medical research was at in the 90s has nothing to do with what it is today. And even if there is so much left to do, and I mean, I'm really advocating for the funding in medical research and the funding specifically for chronic illnesses because it's intertwined with so many other things
yeah.
that we still don't fully comprehend and know of. But I mean, in the 90s, it was a completely different scene. I mean, it was just, you couldn't be diagnosed for the same things you are today because they weren't well known or known at all. So I think that it was also probably quite difficult for the doctors at that point, to understand what some kids like you were going through because they just didn't know about it. And I think today it's a completely different. The methods are completely different, and the research has, even though it's not as good as we would like it to be, it still has advanced from the 90s to today. And I think that's probably why there are so many people getting diagnosed later in life and after their 30s, because in the 90s, as kids, we couldn't get diagnosed with some stuff. And the interesting thing is that you can look back and see that you weren't crazy and that there was something biologically that was up with you, and not it wasn't only in your head. And
Yes,
even if people
yes.
didn't believe you, then there was something that was there that you now know of. How did you feel when you were diagnosed?
Relieved and hopeful, but I
Hmm.
didn't realize there's no cure. So
Okay.
I didn't realize it was a forever sort of sickness, I guess.
And when did you make peace with that?
So I actually just made peace with it. Oh gosh. I want to say this summer sometime. I was my illest from about 34 to 36. So for those years and the year after, I just went through constant cycles of grief because I was just bedbound 4 out of 7 days a week,
Oh,
and it looked like severe ME/CFS, like what
okay.
Ren was misdiagnosed with, but that's what it came across as, for the most part. So, yeah, I picked up the Bible. That's what I did. I
Mm,
picked up the Bible and I read John, and I was reintroduced to Jesus, who, without knowing Jesus, you can't know God. And so I was able to reconnect with God. And when I gave them the weight I had been carrying around for so long, a huge burden was just lifted, and it was beautiful. And it still is beautiful, and I'm really happy that that's how I was able to cross over to acceptance. It's to
mm,
find that truth for me.
mm.
And I don't know if it's like that with other things like addiction. A lot of times you have to give it up to a higher power, but for me, that's what it took. And fortunately, I feel like I have them behind me holding me up, so they've got my back.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, spirituality is definitely not the same for everyone, and I mean, there are so many different religions and belief systems, and I mean, everyone has their own view on things. But I think when you're faced with death, you do start to question spirituality in any way that in regards to your culture and to your family. And I mean, uh there's always some questions that come up, and I think it's very common for a lot of people to have um, these thoughts about spirituality and how it can help and how it can relieve some of the pain and the pressure. And if that is what's happened for you, then I think it's great that you could find that, and that it has helped you find acceptance and live um, through your days, which are probably sometimes really difficult, a little bit easier.
Yes, it does. It gives me someone to talk to at least
Yeah,
on my
of
most
course.
difficult things, and so it's it's been good for me, and it's worked out well. Um, and I really appreciate that Ren touches on that spiritual piece of it because, like you said, it is such a giant part of chronic illness and just life in general. But it's
Hmm.
very private. It's a
Yep.
private struggle. And I
Yeah.
appreciate that he's open and shares it with people because a lot of people never understood how I could feel such a way. But I'd introduce them to Ren's music, and he could explain it in a way that I couldn't get across.
Well,
So,
that is something that I've heard so many times now, that people that are chronically ill actually use some of his songs and make them listen to people, to their family or to their friends, to say, just listen to the lyrics in the song and you'll fully comprehend what I'm going through. And who are just using that as a vessel, to have people have more understanding for what they're going through. So what was your first encounter with Ren and his music, and how did you come to be a renegade then?
okay, so my husband actually called me downstairs and said, "Hey, come watch this video." And I was
Okay.
like, "Okay," because I love music. It's always been a huge cornerstone in my life. So it was Animal Flow. And
Okay.
I was like, this song is awesome. Like, it is off the chains. Like, the video, everything. I loved it. It was right up my alley. I come from a new metal type background, like Slipknot genre type
Yeah.
music.
Yeah.
It's like kind of weird and dark. And yeah, I liked all the aspects of it. And then when he said, I get kind of sick when I'm stressed. Do you remember that in Animal Farm?
Mhm.
I was like, hey, me too.
Mhm.
And from there, I went on to listen to Sick Boy. And then I discovered that he was also ill. And then I listened to one of his interviews with someone and realized we have the same disorders.
Mm,
And then since then I've just related so much to so much that he writes and puts into his music.
I don't know how many times I listened to The Hunger, but because I've always been since well, probably since the Slim Shady LP, I would say I've loved rap and I've listened to a lot of rap. I'm truly a metalhead, but I've been listening. Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of rap, and I really love. I've always loved Eminem and Dr. Dre, and so um, I really, when I heard The Hunger, I was like, oh, this is a classic. This is just so good because, and the switch ups are just constant. So
Yeah,
for me, is I can't get bored of the song. So that's what makes me so interested in his music is that I never get bored. What are the songs that you could most relate to?
um the songs that I most relate to, definitely Seven Sins. That is my masterpiece song. My husband knows he's not allowed to ad lib anything in. It's just, you don't touch that song. It's untouchable. It's just perfect the way it is. So, Seven Sins, I think I really relate to, and it's a great way to kind of convey the pain and how dark, and it goes into the spirituality and just everything about it.
Mm,
Um, I'd say suicide actually helped me a lot. So thank you, Ren,
mm,
because it brought up a lot of the word suicide. It wasn't a trigger word, but it brought up a lot of uneasy feelings from the past.
mhm,
Like, I didn't have problems talking about it, but I didn't like the way the word made me feel.
mhm,
Well, his song desensitized me to that word, not in a
mhm,
bad way, but
mhm.
in a way that I can say it now and it's not like just memories flooding back through my
Yeah,
head. So
yeah,
I really appreciate that.
yeah. That's really important, yeah. Because I've touched upon that, as I said, with Rosalie in the video, and we I said, well, I think it's really interesting that he decided to just repeat the words so many times because it's something that no one really wants to talk about.
Yes.
And and for people who've gone through situations like this, it's often if we bottle up the emotions and that we keep them, in a secure place somewhere where we don't think about them for years, then it becomes a really difficult topic to talk about too, and a difficult word to say in the end. And so it's really very helpful for a lot of people that he decided to write it that way and to just use the word over and over again because it really helps, open the door to being at peace with the matter.
I couldn't agree more. That's exactly how I feel about it.
So do you feel like you do have people today that you can talk with that understand you better, or do you still feel a little bit lonely with all of this?
So my husband is beyond the best partner in crime when you have
Oh.
chronic illness. He
Oh,
really is. He's my number one advocate. So
oh,
I feel really well heard by him. But of course, he sees it every day. So he's like, well, yeah, I know what she's going through because
yeah,
I see it.
yeah.
So it's harder for those that don't see. We moved to a very small town,
Mm-hmm,
and ever since moving here, my work, my job, I had to go part time for a while because I was so ill. And
mm-hmm,
even then, it was a struggle to get to work. Um,
yeah.
but my boss and coworkers were just so understanding. I mean, the humanity that of the town that we moved into is just really beautiful.
Oh,
And the
that's great.
understanding and acceptance that I've gotten, even if they don't understand completely,
Mhm.
they still want what's best for me.
I think that's the empathy is the most important thing.
Hmm.
Because even if you don't understand someone, even if you don't agree with someone, if you have empathy, then you can respect and accept the person how they are, even if you don't understand what's going on. So I think if you're, if you have a lot of empathy around you, even if maybe you do feel misunderstood sometimes, then as long as the people love you how for who you are and accept what you're going through, even if they don't understand, that's the most important thing anyhow.
Yeah.
To wrap things up, I wanted to know, is there anything that you would like to say to the people that are watching this video? And is there any message you want to bring to those people, to either other people that are chronically ill or people who are trying to understand those illnesses?
Sure. This is more directed to the chronically ill community, but well, actually, no. This is applicable to anyone. And it sounds really cliche, but you can either use these experiences to make you better or make you bitter. And if you let them make you bitter, you're going to lose the battle. You're going to lose hope. You're going to give up on things. Um, so you really need to choose to make it better. And the second thing is, to make it better, you've got to fight. And you've got to fight like hell. You've got to fight like your life depends on it, because it does. It literally does when you have a chronic illness. You are your advocate. No one's coming to save you, and you've got to fight. So, and don't lose hope, because once you've lost hope, you've lost everything.
Mm,
So every day I get up with a warrior attitude, ready to go to battle every day. It's just another war I have to fight, but I'm ready for that, and I practice gratitude daily, because it's really easy to look at everything and say, well, I can't exercise anymore. I can't eat my favorite foods anymore, I lost
yeah.
the ability to walk or run or whatever. It's really easy, but to hang in there and, yeah, don't lose hope. So, and straight to the point. There's no
Exactly.
dancing around it. I'm telling you right now, if you want to survive this, you've got to fight.
Yeah.
Because if I would have, the 2 years I was bedbound, if I would have just given up, which would have been so easy to do, just
Yeah.
quit my job, go on disability, lay around the house, just be comfortable, not worry about other stuff, and focus on me, well, that would have been easy. But I chose to, anytime I could get up and move, I got up and moved. I would walk up and down the stairs if I was able to.
Yeah.
I just made an effort every day to put forth making me better. And I
Yeah.
think that's really helped.
Well, thank you so much. And I think you're a great person, Jen. And I was so happy to do this with you and that we got to talk together. And thank you for all of the insight, because I think what you went through, and the fact that you opened up about all of this is going to help someone who's watching.
I hope so. Thank you for
I'm sure.
having me. It was a wonderful interview.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of The Unheard. I hope you liked it. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to get more of that. And check out the description of the video and the links in my bio to see how you can help with the research. See you soon.